the lesson comes really from one of the cute little stories that God gave me years ago in the book. I want you to first of all go back in time with me, a couple thousand years. James is about 10 years old, and his big brother, Jesus, is about 12. Now, what do typical Jewish boys do at this time? Well, they obviously spend time every day doing their Torah lessons, but they're going to be spending time doing chores around the house, especially helping their father in his shop. But the favorite thing that they do is they play games. They're young boys. They're going to play games. Their favorite game of all is hide and seek. But there's a challenge. The challenge is James can never find Jesus, and Jesus always finds James. You know, Jesus is kind of like the Son of God, so he can, defy whatever stuff is out there. So I take you back a few years, and they're playing hide and seek. So come with me for just a brief moment. Okay, I'm it today. So I'm going to find him. I'm going to find him this time. I'm going to cheat. Okay, so here we go. Deuteronomy 1, Deuteronomy 2, Deuteronomy 3, Deuteronomy 7, Deuteronomy 10, 15, 25, Deuteronomy 50, 100. Okay, I can't make it too obvious. I got to find some other friends first. So, Mark! Hey, Jude! I see you behind that tree. I got to find Jesus. Okay. Hey! How did you get that's just not fair! Have you ever felt like that? You're seeking God where you think God is and where you think God wants you, but in reality, he's over here. Now, he's all around us, obviously, but he's working over here. He wants you over here instead of over there. So that's our lesson. How do we seek God? Where are we seeking God? Are we seeking God in our comfort zone where we want God to be? Or are we seeking God where he wants us to be? I take you back to 2008. I'm living in the North Dallas area. Life is good. We got, stinky economy at that point in time, but life is good. God starts telling me I'm going to be moving. Now, I was volunteering at a church and their worship team, and I'm thinking God wants me to do something in a worship ministry at another church on a staff type position. I've been leading worship in some form for 30 plus years, and I kind of knew my way around that world. So I'm like, God, here I am. I'm obedient. Take me. Tell me where you want me to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I will go anywhere. Well, except Maryland. Okay, God, did you hear that? I'm not going to Maryland, okay? Hey, why Maryland? Well, I grew up in Maryland in this little town of about 12,000 people. When I left there in 78, the population went down to 11,999, and it hasn't changed. Every night they roll the sidewalk up because there's nothing that's going on. Well, God and I had this understanding. I'll go anywhere he wants me to go. St. Thomas, Hawaii, Tahiti, it'd be great places. They need worship. But I decided that I didn't want to go back to Maryland. See, I was living in this world over here that was my comfort zone. I was seeking God where I wanted to be. I wasn't seeking God where he wanted me to be. May of 2009, I packed up a truck. You'll never guess where I went. Maryland. Went to Maryland. You see, God and I had this understanding. I didn't want to go, but he did. My mom was 86 years old at the time. She needed some help. And I was single. I could move. So I packed up my stuff and I moved to Maryland. I had no clue how long I was going to be there. I just knew that God wanted me there. Shortly after getting there, within the first couple of weeks, I figured out exactly what it was she needed on a day-to-day basis. I became her personal shopper. her chauffeur, her chef. I did her laundry. I took her to doctor's offices, all of those kinds of things. I became her caregiver. And it was the most incredible 2.5 years that I think I've spent in my life. And I will cherish those memories for a very long time. But I figured out what needed to be done, and I could do everything in an hour to an hour and a half every day. So what do I do with the rest of my time? Well, I'm seeking God. I'm trying to figure out exactly what He wants down the road. Not today, but down the road as well. Fast forward to the spring of 2011. I'm still in this process of taking care of Mom, and I'm still in the process of trying to figure out exactly what it is God wants me to do. And during that time, it was right around Easter time, I went to a couple of different church productions, big pageant type things. One of them was telling the story of Christ from the perspective of Nicodemus, the other one from the perspective of a Roman soldier. And I started thinking to myself, why is it I've never seen this story told from one of Jesus' siblings' perspectives? Thoughts started going back some 10, 15 years prior to that. And I started thinking about 20 years ago now about what it would be like if Jesus was your big brother. And that's where the story of hide and seek came from. So that's a 20-year-old story that God just kind of put in my head, and I chuckle about it from time to time, and I just keep it in the back of my head. So Easter Sunday, I go to church that morning with Mom, we come back, and I decide I'm going to write a play. So I start working on my computer, and after about 20 pages or so, I realize I'm not writing a play, I'm writing a novel. Well, the funny thing about that is, about 5 or 6 years prior to this, I'm having lunch with a friend of mine. He's in the process of writing a book on business principles, and he'd share chapters with me and ask me to review just to, does it flow properly? Well, as I'm reading one of the chapters, I thought to myself, gosh, I would love to write a book, but what would I write a book about? You see, the problem was I was living over here. I was seeking God in my comfort zone, and God was planting the seeds for me to move into His comfort zone, which are very different things. You see, I had put God in this box. It was a Steve-sized box, and that's all I could comprehend. But God was telling me I have no box because I have no limits. Don't put me in a box. So I'm writing feverishly, having an absolute blast. I remember one day in particular, my mom in her house, she's got a beautiful glassed-in patio on the back of the house. Woods back behind the house. I remember one morning, I was working for probably 2.5 hours. It's lunchtime, I got up, I fixed Mom some lunch. I'd been writing all morning. Run some errands, I come back and I reread the things that I had written that morning. I don't remember typing a single word. It was as if I had gotten out of the Steve box and God ushered me into His world. And the words just flowed. I sat there as I read that in total awe of what God had done. Fast forward a little more. Early in July 2011, I'm sound asleep one night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Sound asleep. And all of a sudden, I wake up as if it's 10 in the morning and I've had 3 cups of coffee. 3 pots of coffee, oh my gosh. I was wide awake. And I started hearing the word Spanish over and over and over and over again. And then I hear Portuguese, and then I hear Chinese, and then I hear French, and I hear Italian, and I hear German and Russian. And then I start hearing the number 20 over and over again. I'm thinking, God, it's 2 in the morning. Can I please just go to sleep? Finally fell back to sleep about an hour and a half later. A couple of days later, God revealed to me that He's going to be publishing the book in 20 different languages. God? One? How about English? You see, I was living in the Steve world. My finite mind couldn't comprehend, it initially couldn't comprehend writing a book at all and having it published, but much less 20 different languages. God was moving me into his world. I was seeking him where he was instead of where my comfort zone was. Well, at that point in time, I still had a lot of business here in the Dallas area, so I would fly back and forth every 3 to 4 months. And I remember vividly one day coming back, and this is towards the middle of July. I remember getting into my rental car at a DFW airport, and I'm driving north on George Bush, and it's as if God was sitting in the seat next to me. He says, "You're home. You're home. God, don't tease me." Because he knew how much I loved the area. You see, Dallas, being in the Bible Belt, it's oftentimes referred to as the buckle of the Bible Belt. And if I'm writing a book about the life of Jesus, it'd be kind of appropriate for me to be, where a lot of the action is. Okay, God, whatever, okay. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm living in this world, but God's got bigger plans for me. Well, as I was here throughout that week, I had a lot of meetings. I was running ragged. And I remember on Saturday that week, I was having lunch with a friend of mine and a girl that he was dating. And Mark says, "You need to share with Karen some of the stories about the book." Okay, fine. So I shared several different stories. And then I shared the story about the 20 languages. And she says, "Do you know who I work for?" No. She names the ministry that she's working with. And if I mention it, you'd know it immediately. And she says, "Did you know that 2 days ago, we installed a software program that was developed by Carnegie Mellon University that is the most powerful translation program on the market today. All you do is download the data, select the languages, hit execute, and it's translated." Wow. I have been living in this world. God, can I publish one language? And God had so much bigger. I had no clue, and he ushered me into his world. Have you ever walked up to a wall, and there's nothing? I mean, it's a wall. Maybe it's a brick wall. It doesn't move, and all of a sudden, it opens. And that's exactly what happened. It's almost as if God answered a prayer before I even knew there was a need there. And he keeps doing it over and over and over again. Well, December of 2011, in my finite mind, I made some choices. Some good, some bad, mostly bad. I got back to the Dallas area, and unfortunately I suffered some consequences in the process because I was too impatient over here and I didn't wait on God and seek God. When I got here, God held me through the next 2 years. I fast forward to a year and a half ago. I'm on Facebook one day, and I'm just kind of looking around and seeing what other people are posting, and I see a post from a friend of mine. Gosh, I haven't seen her in, oh wow, it's been 6, 7 years. No, it's been over 10. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen her in 15 years. I wonder how she's doing. So I go to her Facebook page and I send a friend request, and it took her a few days to respond, but she finally responded. And I'm looking around more and more thinking, she's, yeah, okay. And I start thinking to myself, I don't see, and pieces were starting to come together when we started chatting. And it was the text messaging and instant messaging and that kind of thing. And come to find out, she was going through some life challenges. Well, at that point in time, and for several years before, I've been involved in a ministry organization. It was kind of a personal development program that gave people the tools that they needed to deal with life issues. Whatever the life issue is, we had a tool for it. And it was a teaching process. And I thought, I could probably share some of those tools, but I've got some life experience in that world as well. So I invited her to have coffee one Saturday morning. In fact, it was December 5th, 2015. We got together for coffee. And I was anticipating an hour to an hour and a half. 4 hours later, a lot of cups of coffee and breakfast. We finished. I remember vividly. I'm sitting there a few minutes before 10 when we were going to get together, sitting in a booth, and I see her head walking down the sidewalk, and she comes into the restaurant. And I see her and I think to myself, wow, she hasn't changed a bit in 15 years. She's absolutely gorgeous. I get up, I walk over, I hug her, usher back to the booth where we're sitting. And we spend the next 4 hours sharing stories. We had some laughs, we shed some tears. She shared her story, I shared my story. And I was trying to give her some hope through some of the junk that I had dealt with in my life. Well, I told her about the program that I had been involved with, and she started thinking about it. She had already been through some counseling and dealing with getting to the next chapter. A few weeks later, she says, I've enrolled in the program. I registered, so I'm going to go through the program. Okay, that's kind of cool. Well, she went through the program in the middle of January. At that point in time, I was one of the leaders, one of the overseers of the program. And we'd start with a group of 30, 40 people, something like that, in a big group setting, and then get down into small groups of 3 to 5, and then there'd be some one-on-one things. It wasn't counseling, we're just asking a lot of questions. Well, I was keeping my distance because I didn't need to influence or impact at all. So I remember at one point in time, Saturday afternoon, there were a lot of drills in the program, a lot of exercises that can be very intense exercises. So when everything is done, that's not a physical thing where you're doing ropes or anything of that sort, but after each of these exercises or drills, they would have some quiet time for people. There was music that was playing in the background and lights are turned down low. And everybody's supposed to just think about what they had experienced. I remember standing there looking at this group of about 30 people, and everybody is sitting in their chairs, heads bowed, and just reflecting on what they had just experienced. Everybody except for one person. Suzanne was on her knees with her hands raised, surrendering to God. And God said, take another look. Well, back when we were having breakfast, I had put conditions on future relationships, being a single guy, late 50s. I said, God, this is what will work for me. She can't be going through junk in her life. And no kids at home, okay? No kids at home. Well, Suzanne didn't qualify because she was dealing with junk in her life. Who isn't? And she had a 16-year-old son at home. I said, God, not interested. That Saturday afternoon, God said, take another look. I said, God, no. A few days after the program was over, I called her up. And I said, I want to chat for a minute. Okay. But first, I got to tell you, there's an elephant in the room. She's like, an elephant in the room? I said, yeah. How do I say this? I want to date you. She said yes. So we started the dating process, and we realized as the more time we were together, the closer we were, and the ultimate goal was the same, and that was to serve the Lord. On May 25th at 9 o'clock at night, we're walking around a little park, not too far from the apartment complex where I was living. And I decided now was the time. We stopped for a minute, sat down on a park bench, and I got down on one knee. And I asked Suzanne to be my wife. Go figure, she said yes. August 26th, we got married. We got married at the base of the lighthouse there in Rockwall. She knew that I loved lighthouses, so she found this. This is kind of cool. I had no clue it was there. Well, I tell you that because I had put all of these conditions. I was seeking God over here. And God said, Steve, I have so much more for you. If you just seek me where I want you to be. Something like that. You see, I was living in this finite world over here. And I had put God in a box. A Steve-sized box. And God said, I've got something so much bigger for you over here. You just need to listen to me and listen to the people that I put in your path. And I'm absolutely amazed at how many times God has had to teach me this lesson to get out of my box, my world, my comfort zone, and move into His. So August 26th, we got married. And we decided to go on our honeymoon. I wanted to go to a beach or take a cruise or something like that. And Suzanne, in her infinite wisdom, says, no, we need to go to Big Cedar Lodge. If you don't know about Big Cedar Lodge, you need to put this on your bucket list. Big Cedar is owned by the Bass Pro family. It's up near Branson. Absolutely gorgeous resort. I'm so glad we did that. Well, as we were there, keep in mind, Big Cedar is owned by the Bass Pro people, a lot of outdoor related things. We're walking through their gift shop one day, and I see this display of walking sticks. And I thought, you know what? I need to get one of those, so when I'm doing James stuff in costume, I got a walking stick. And it wasn't an audible voice. It wasn't God saying, Steve, don't buy it. It was just the sense that I wasn't supposed to buy it. Well, they were manufactured, okay? They were store-bought. A couple of weeks later, I got a text message from a friend of mine, and he asked if I was going to a particular meeting. I said, I was. He says, okay, I've got something for you. Okay, great. I didn't think anything of it. After the meeting was over, Mike goes out to his car, and he brings me a staff. Now, what's significant about this is a couple of things. Number one, I had been at his church several months before, and I had done a James presentation in costume. And he told me a story about one of the guys that was there. This is out in East Texas. And he says, he came up to Mike after everything was over, and he started talking about how my stories about James and his relationship to Jesus became so real to him, and how he really started to think about his relationship with Jesus and how that presentation changed his life. And he wanted to do something for me to say thank you. So he carved a walking stick, a staff. So it stands in the corner of my office. I had made a decision based on the knowledge that I had at that point in time, my limited knowledge about a walking stick. I was going to buy that. And God said, no, I've got something much better for you over here. So when I look at the staff sitting in the corner, I'm reminded, I don't need to be over there. I need to be where God wants me. So my question is, we begin 2017. Are you seeking God in your comfort zone, in your world? Or are you seeking God where He's working and where He wants you to be? My challenge for you this year, for myself, I don't want to be there. I want to be right here. I leave you with this. Blessings on your journey.